Greetings, this is Marley from the Black Father Support Group. Welcome to another one of our videos. This one is on excuses and why excuses are no longer acceptable. Excuses are very comforting, very nice and easy to be able to give you a way out of not doing something. Unfortunately, excuses hasn't worked for us as a people. What we've been seeing recently is that there's been a real ramping up of the anti-African rhetoric coming from mainstream media, and this time it was coming out of Cologne in West Germany. Over the New Year's, so today's the 10th of January that I'm doing this video, over New Year's, it was alleged that 1,000 men of North African and Arab descent or features were, going around in marauding gangs, raping and sexually assaulting white women. Now, the story didn't get that much traction by the mainstream media. I assert because it was made up. But the people like, your Stormfronts and your and those sort of websites, those real white supremacy websites, were going in hard, talking about how, this is why we need to start looking out for the white race, because of the fact that these North Africans and these Muslims are running amok among our women. This is nothing new. This has happened time and time again when they are trying to build up momentum for their causes and their people. They will run this story about, their poor women who are being victimized by the hands of black African Muslim people. So I'm not surprised by this story, and as soon as I heard it, I knew it was BS. I knew it immediately. I heard it. The reason why I think that is BS, because first of all, I don't care whether there's a car crash, a fight in the street, people falling down in the snow, all sorts. There's always somebody who has a camera phone who's recording it all the time. There is like a lot of our news that comes through the mainstream media starts off with some shaky camera phone footage. And here we are on New Year's Eve in the city of Cologne, Germany, with millions of people in that city. Hundreds of thousands of people who would have been out to celebrate New Year's Eve, and there's not one video of these 1,000 men going around in gangs of 40 or 30 people sexually molesting and raping white women. I haven't seen one. I've checked YouTube, I've gone up and down, looked around, looked at associated videos. I cannot find one. So I know that it's BS. I was listening to LBC, and in LBC, the person who was running the talk show, the radio show, said, this is not a cultural, this is not a racial thing, and this is not a religious thing. This is a cultural thing. This is what happens when you have mass immigration. So with Germany accepting mass immigration of people from Syria, you have people who have 18th century beliefs about women, and they have come into this first world country. These are third world people coming into a first world country with 18th century ideals, and now they are taking advantage of our beautiful women, who may be scantily clad and they're not used to it in their world. This is what he was trying to say. And he was saying that this was a cultural thing, not a racial thing and not a religious thing. He opens the phone lines, and the very first call is from someone who's saying, this is the reason why we need to make sure that we look out for our people, because this is an extermination of the white race. Israel is running the world, and because Israel's running the world, then they're trying to reduce and remove white people, and so now this is why white people need to band together again. And the radio station host was saying, no, I said it's not racial, this is not religious, this is cultural. Thanks very much for your call. Next call. Next person calls in. He's like, this is why we need to Stop with allowing Muslims in our country, because Muslims are going to ruin it for everybody else. This is why we have to keep England for the English. Make sure it's a white-only country. Done stuff. Oh, hold on a second, he says. As I said before, this is not religious. This is not racial. This is cultural. I'm like, if he really thought that he could come on the radio and use a word like culture and not think people are going to change that into race or religion, he's having a laugh. He knew the minute he started using that word. You know, I never really took notice of the type of words people are using, but over the last couple of years, I've been listening to Tariq Nasheed, and he's always mentioned about code words and how white supremacists use code words to get certain ideals and ideas across. And I realized, culture is another one of these code words. While he's saying, look, this is a cultural thing and this is not racial and this is not religious, he's literally saying this is racial and this is religious. Now you have this floor open for you to come on the radio and spout what you want to spout. I can't spout it because I'm a radio host, but I hope you will do. And he got what he wanted. He had people calling in, talking about how they need to keep this place white and England for the English and all the rest of it. Because we got to remember, as Chris Rock said, patriotism very quickly turns into hatriotism. You think that because these people are talking about Muslims and North African descent, they're not including you. Again, code words. These are code words. Basically, that means not us, not white Christian people. So if you're mixed race, they're talking about you. If you are black and dark like I am, they're talking about you. And we're sitting there like dodos. You know the dodo? The dodo was a bird that is now extinct. And the reason anthropologists say it's extinct is because they would just sit there and you could come along, knock one over the head, and the others would just stay. They wouldn't move. They would just say, oh man, Albert's gone, and not care about it. Then the next guy will come up and be like, yeah, I want a bird as well. Knock the next bird knock the next bird over the head, kill that bird, and the other birds wouldn't move. I'm like, shoot, man, Jerry's gone, and wouldn't even notice that they're gonna be next. So let's not be dodos about this, all right? Understand that when these guys are talking about Muslim, they're talking about you. When they're talking about Arab, they're talking about you. When they're talking about North African descent, they are talking about you. We have to really start being careful and stop using excuses. Stop thinking that we can hide behind being quiet, trying to keep under the radar. Katie Hopkins. I need to talk about Katie Hopkins because Katie Hopkins was also on the radio recently. And she said words to the effect of men in Syria and Muslim countries, they see their women as lower below them and their children below them. And this is the reason why you see so many children's bodies floating up on the beaches of Greece when these people have tried to escape from their country. They'll chuck the children and the women overboard so the men can make it. She comes out with such inflammatory BS. I've been told I can't swear when I'm on the Black Father Support Group YouTube page, so I'm trying real hard here, fellas. But she comes out with this inflammatory BS in order to rile up the troops. She started talking about how in places like Rotherham and some other, backwater counties in England where they found a single sex ring, paedophile sex ring that was operating, and they said they were targeting white girls. It's the same story again, these Muslims and so on, they're targeting our beloved white women. She forgot to mention the number of care homes up and down the country who for decades have been abusing young white girls and white boys. She forgot to mention how the BBC have had to bow their head in shame and people have to be fired as executives. People who've been running the organisation have also been running sex rings targeting young girls and young boys. She forgot to mention how Hollywood is well known and well documented for running sex rings for young, impressionable kids trying to get into the industry. She forgot to mention how, again, even the royal family in this country are embroiled in allegations of sexual misconduct and debauchery involving children. She forgot all of that. She just mentioned these one set of Indian people who are up to no good. I'm not excusing them, but what I am saying is that, you know, you are there in the middle of a glass house and you are still trying to throw stones at other people. Katie Hopkins should be embarrassed and ashamed of her own people, because if there was anybody on this planet that we could look at and say, well, they put their children and their women as below them, then you don't have to go any further than Western Europe and the Americas. Those people have got that on lock. If you're one of these people who like to make excuses for what is going on in this country, why you can't move forward, why you can't get ahead, you need to start changing that. You need to start forcing yourself to change it. When your brain starts coming out with an excuse, you need to say your brain to shut up. You need to start looking at and surrounding yourself with people who do not use excuses to deal with their issues. You need to look at people like, say, Got Kush TV, who didn't use the excuse, well, there isn't any black media, so that's not fair, I've got nothing to watch. No, they start their own black media. You need to look at people like All Nights, who said, well, my children have nothing or positive images or anything positive for them to read. It's all about, you know, the black child or the black person in the program being the sidekick. This isn't fair. No. All Night started their own thing and started to show and create their own black superheroes. You need to start looking at people like Black History Studies, who didn't say, my God, if you go to a college here in London, you try and find some course on history studies of Africa and African people in the UK and so on, you can't find it. So what did they do? They started their own one. It's been going successfully for years. You could look at someone like Back to Black Empire, who saw the need for positive black images, and instead of just complaining that there isn't enough, started collating, speaking to artists who are willing to do that kind of work and now sell African art. I remember one time in the shop, a young lady had come there with her daughter because she had locks, and her daughter in school cut off her locks because her friends were laughing at her, and her mum spent an absolute fortune just buying pictures that she could put around her house of beautiful black women, just so that her daughter was exposed to seeing herself as something other than ugly as her friends were trying to convince her at school. So these are the things that we have to do. No more excuses. If you find yourself being one of these excuse makers, start surrounding yourself with people who don't do that. Start doing things like going on Black History walks and seeing what greatness there is within you. Start listening to people like the Black Authority on YouTube. Start listening to people like Tariq Nasheed, like I do, you know, where you can start to see and hear just how great you are on so many levels. And as you peel back those levels, you just see more and more greatness. It's crazy. 2016 has to be the year of us being unstoppable, people. We can't allow these idiots, these Katie Hopkins people, to decide how we're going to be viewed. We need to start viewing ourselves as great and forcing other people to see us as great, because we are, and there's absolutely no other word to describe us. This is Marley from the Black Father Support Group, and I'm signing off.